Hello, everyone. Welcome to the REDX Podcast. My name is Andrew, and I am so excited for our guest today. We've had him on the show before. You've probably seen some of his coaching or seen him on Facebook and some of the groups out there. His name is Dale Archdekin, and he has been in sales for nearly 3 decades. I think he says he's been in there for 30 years. He's been in various sales positions, and he is an amazing coach and real estate trainer. He has such a wonderful consumer first approach to real estate that really resonated with me, because I think a lot of agents don't like coming across as too salesy or having sales breath, or they get turned away because they're so eager for business that you know their prospects and their prospective clients see that, feel that, and turn them away. Well, Dale has amazing tactics and strategies and scripts for kind of counteracting that, putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer and really having a genuine and authentic interaction with your prospects every single time. So on today's podcast, we start by talking about motivation, getting into the right mood to do what you actually need to do. We talk about the feel like it factor, right? I don't feel like prospecting. I don't feel like making calls. I don't feel like making connections, building relationships, networking, all these things. What you can do to actually get that going, get the reward system moving, and make that a fulfilling part of your career. Then we jump into some really tactical stuff. We talk scripts. Dale has an amazing introduction script that will help you, again, relate to the consumer, uncover their needs and their motivations. And something that was a little bit new to me, not just pushing for the close right away, but finding out how many needs and motivations they have, and really taking your time to build a solid relationship, uncover the motivations without being manipulative, without fooling someone, or without coming across as too salesy. We talk about how sales has changed over the last three decades, and how Dale has seen those changes and what he does to kind of adapt. We talk about the consumer intuition, what they're thinking about you as a salesperson, because at the end of the day, we're all consumers. We're all being, people are trying to sell us stuff all day, every day. And it really helps to put yourself in that mindset when you're reaching out to prospective clients, to customers, to consumers, and working with them to sell real estate. So I don't want to give away too much before we get into it. I'm just really excited for the show today. I'll let you watch and listen and learn from Dale. But before we do that, just real quick, I wanted to share an amazing resource we have for objections and objection handlers. If there's one type of content and one topic that our audience engages with most, and that we know everyone wants and needs, it is how to handle objections when you're on your prospecting calls. Well, we have put together an amazing, complete objection handler e-guide. I'll put it on the screen right here. This e-guide has objection handlers for every single type of lead in real estate: expireds for sell by owners, geo leads for rent by owners, all the great leads, pre-foreclosures, short sales. It's your playbook for better conversations and more appointment. We talk about what objection handlers are, why you use them, and then we have, I think, dozens, if not hundreds, of objection handlers in this ebook that will help you have better conversations with your prospects. So check out this e-guide. To do that, all you need to do is go to redx.bz/handle it. Again, that's redx.bz/handle it, all one word. And you can download this e-guide, have all those objection handlers at your fingertips. Now, Dale and I are going to talk a little bit about objections in this upcoming podcast. So download this before we even start. Go do it right now. Come back to the podcast, and there will be a lot of great content to help you, navigate and really implement those to the best of your ability, and in a way that will really make a big difference in your business. So that's all. I'll stop rambling about those objection handlers. Let's dive into it. Ladies and gentlemen, our podcast with Dale Archdekin. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the REDX Podcast. My name is Andrew, and I am so excited for today's guest. He's been on the show before. If you are in the real estate industry, you've probably seen him around. If you haven't, then you're really missing out. His name is Dale Archdekin, and he's joining us today to talk about a lot of great, important, and interesting stuff. We're going to talk about getting the motivation to prospect. We're going to talk about prospecting without coming across as too salesy, being authentic, all that good stuff. We'll get into that in just a couple minutes here. Dale, how you doing today, my man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Andrew. I really appreciate it. I always love coming on the show. And, as I tell everybody, I have a long history with REDX, and I love you guys.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear it. And like I mentioned, if any of our viewers haven't seen you or heard of you, they need to go check out your stuff. Dale runs one of the top coaching organizations, Smart Sales Coaching, in the industry. They work with a lot of amazing, talented agents. He also runs the Cash Call podcast, a great podcast where they go through live calls and break those down and give advice and really valuable tactical coaching. And what I love about Dale, and this is the last thing I'll say before I let you run with it, Dale, is that he focuses on the conversations, right? Conversations are how you get clients, and that's how you get closings, right? And without having conversations, without building relationships and doing that authentically, what's the point, right? And so we're going to get into a lot of those great conversation strategies and tactics and really get into that. But for those of you watching, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, please like and subscribe. Please check this out. If you like the audio version, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, anywhere you like to listen. So go check those out, like and subscribe, and you can catch this every Thursday at 1:30 Mountain Time. Dale, let's get into it. And I want to start where every agent has to start, which is the motivation to call, the motivation to prospect. A lot of agents say, I don't feel like it. A lot of agents say, that's hard. That's discouraging. This is, just not worth my time. They get too many no's and they get discouraged. What can agents do to find that daily motivation to go have these conversations?
Yeah. Listen, I don't disagree with them. Getting kicked in the face over and over again sucks. I mean, let's just be honest, and that's one of the things that we also try that, I've been a long time salesperson. I realized the other day I've been in sales 30 years now, which, I started in high school part-time working in a telemarketing call center selling credit card insurance over the phone, where I had to I had to tape record people reading their credit card numbers to me so that I could charge them for it. It has never gotten any easier. It's never gotten any more fun to get rejected by abject strangers, right? It just doesn't get any more fun. So one step is just realizing that that's the case. And so, I was thinking a lot about, I was looking actually at my business maybe a couple of years ago, and I was saying, hey, I'm not taking the actions I need to take to grow my business. And I thought it was a motivation problem. And so I started researching motivation, like, any of us business owners do when we need to overcome some challenge in our lives or personally or our business. So I start researching motivation. So I'm like, man, I just need the motivation to go and grow this and get out there and make contacts and potentially get rejected. And what I found is this book called The Motivation Myth by, oh crap, what's his name? Hold on, give me 2 seconds here. His name is, The Motivation Myth by Jeff Hayden is the book. And, this book actually made a huge difference for me, because in the book, essentially what he teaches you is that motivation is only created by activity, and activity must come before motivation, usually. Now, sometimes, you get this great idea like, oh, I'm going to double my production this year. And you get all hyped and you're motivated for about 10 minutes until you start getting punched in the face, or the next day when you need to do stuff, right? So there is that temporary motivation where you have this idea, like, I decided I was going to be a best-selling author, and I get really pumped about that until I actually have to start writing the book. And then the motivation sort of burns off, and I'm like, I could probably do something else right now. So there's that momentary initial motivation around ideas, but to have consistent motivation to continue, taking the activity that you need to take to achieve your goal, you first have to get into activity. And the other thing it taught me is that you will never feel like doing the thing or the activity until you get some way into doing it. And the best example, and one of the examples that he gives in the book, is around exercising, right? Like those who run, I'm not a runner. Don't get me wrong here. But for those who do run, I found this out about runners. They don't feel like doing it either usually, right? when it's cold, when it's early, when they're tired, when they had some beers last night. Like, nobody feels like doing that, but they do it those who do it anyway, once they get into it, they get the energy up, the body starts moving, the energy starts flowing, and they get into it, and it's not that bad. And then it becomes fun, and then they enjoy it. So I have a similar experience when I exercise, when I lift weights. I like the idea of it. I like the idea of getting into shape, right? But I don't want to get started. And this book helped me realize that that's pretty normal, and I'll never feel like doing that, and I won't feel like doing it until I start doing it. So it's really helped me to start taking action in spite of not wanting to do it, based on the faith that I know that once I get in and I shake off some of the rust, I will feel more like doing it. So now I joke, and it's like, hey, I'll get into, I don't want to work out. I start working out. I move a heavy thing from here to over there. I do that a couple times. Then I'm like, oh, this is not so bad. Keep moving heavy things. Then I'm like, oh, this is fun. This is great. I'm going to do this every day, until the next morning when I'm like, I really don't feel like doing it again. And then I have to start over. So, that a lot of it around us prospecting, lead generating, following up with our leads, having those conversations, it's really unlocked it for me. And so I want to give that to your audience. Go get that book, listen to the first 3 chapters. The rest of the book, you could probably do without. First 3 chapters are great.
Okay. I love that. And I think that's really going to resonate with a lot of agents. And I hear it all the time, which is agents are motivated by the idea of money and freedom, right? Because that's what a career in real estate is going to bring you. It's going to bring you lots of money, and it's going to bring you the freedom to work when you want, how you want, where you want, all those things. That's true for a lot of agents, but they've put in the work. They've gotten through, kind of that motivation myth, and they've figured it out. But for newer agents, I think that they're really enamored by that idea. And then the reality is, oh, this is hard, and it's hard to get that motivation. So for those newer agents, or for the agent who is having a hard time staying motivated, and even if this is diving into some of the ideas from that book, what are your strategies for staying motivated to do something like prospecting? Because I feel like when you go running, you get the endorphins, you feel good, you want to repeat that, right? And that gets easier and easier. How can you replicate that, kind of metaphorically for prospecting, where you are for a long time, and even when you're experienced, you're going to get shut down, you're going to get no's, you're going to run into brick walls. It's not going to be as easy as something that is, physically or mentally rewarding to go get that done. How can agents stay motivated there?
Well, I would actually argue that point just slightly, only in that I have so many hours of prospecting under my belt over many years. And here's what I know is that I know in any prospecting session, there will always be at least one good conversation where somebody appreciated talking to you, or you made a human to human connection, or you helped them in some way, or gave them some sort of guidance, or, made a difference for somebody through having your conversation as a salesperson and a professional with them. And of course, that comes with a lot of people who don't want to talk to you or reject you. Sure. But here's what I do know. The endorphins from running has happened. I don't know if I can. The only time that you don't get that is if you don't make enough outreach during your prospecting session. Okay. So if you start prospecting and you only have one interaction and it's a bad interaction, then your perspective is going to be just a bad interaction. So what I'd say is one way to continue motivating is to get started, which is, yes, you're not going to feel like it until you start doing it, and look for the good conversation. Okay. You're going to have to wade through the bad ones, look for the good ones. And good one doesn't even mean, oh, I got a great appointment who's ready to buy or sell right now. A good interaction can just be, I made a good human to human connection and I helped somebody out, or they feel good about our conversation, or I enjoyed the conversation, or they made me laugh. So have faith in the fact that if you make enough outreach in that prospecting session, you're going to get that endorphin rush, which is, I did something good, I made a connection, and I feel good about it.
Right. Absolutely. I love that. And before we started this podcast, we were talking a little bit pre-show, and you were talking about, I think it connects here, this feel like it factor, this feel like it concept, right? Can you kind of dive into that and explain to our audience how that ties into this motivation here?
Yeah, sure. So, in that book that I'm talking about, it helped me to realize that I will never feel like, usually won't feel like taking the action I need to take to grow my business. So for you listening, that might be making the contacts you need to make, or following up with the people that you need to follow up with. For me in my business, I have to network with other high-level entrepreneurs and other vendors in the space. That's how I grow my business. And I don't always feel like doing that.
Right.
So when we're training salespeople, especially, we have to point out that whole feel like it factor, which is reality, and teach them this principle, which is, no, you're probably not going to feel like it. You're probably usually not going to feel like it. The degree to which you let the feel like it control you versus you understanding it and taking action anyway is the degree to which you get closer to achieving your goals. So your feel like it factor is one of the major elements that's in your way. And then furthermore, to help with the feel like it, right? So there's like, I don't feel like it, or I really don't feel like it. Listen, if you don't have the skill set to have a good, productive conversation with damn near any other human on this planet in a salesperson role, then you really probably won't feel like doing it, on top of any other reason you might not or be motivated to do it, right? So we know that if we can help you with your skills, help you with your perspective about the consumers that you're approaching, and you're already exuding some measure of control over your feel like it to begin with, those two elements combined are going to mean that you are more likely to take action more consistently, and that will get you closer and closer and closer to reaching your goals.
I love it. I love all of that. And I think that's a great segue into, so let's say I'm motivated. Let's say I've overcome this feel like it factor. I'm ready to I do feel like prospecting. I want to go do it. Let's get into the actual conversations. Let's get into something that I've watched your content before, Dale. And I love that you have this approach of, not coming across as a salesperson. And you've said several times in this podcast, you are a salesperson, right?
Yeah.
Those are the conversations you're having, and that needs to be expected. But I think a lot of people have kind of an intuition, or a lot of people have this feeling of when a salesperson is trying to sell them something aggressively, right? I've heard the term sales breath before, versus when someone is trying to help you, or maybe just trying to get to the bottom of your problem. Like, can we dive a little bit more into that, and how can we get people we prospect to and contacts we make to actually want to interact with us?
Sure. Yeah, we can. Okay. So when I'm teaching salespeople, one of the most important things, or one of the biggest issues that I run into, is that salespeople don't approach consumers. In a lot of cases, they don't approach consumers the way they want to be approached, right? And so I do a lot of teaching around the fact that how a consumer sees a salesperson. Because how a consumer sees a salesperson, especially strangers, right? So those of us in the lead generation and lead conversion game, we have to have a lot of conversations with strangers who don't know, like, and trust us. When somebody doesn't know, like, or trust you, they regard you as a salesperson. And so one of the easiest ways to let's see how this works, Andrew. Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question. Okay. Let's say that a salesperson calls you randomly out of the blue. You don't know them. You had no intention to talk to them. They call you up, you answer the phone, and you immediately realize, unfortunately, this is a salesperson. What do you want to know immediately, Andrew?
Well, I want to know how long it's going to take me to hang up the phone. No, I'm just kidding. What do you want? What are you trying to sell me?
What do you want? What are you trying to sell? What else?
How much does it cost?
How much does it cost? But even more basic than that. So they answer, you don't know who this is. You answer the phone.
Yeah.
What do you want to know?
Who is this?
Who is this? What do you want? And probably why you're calling me, right?
Yeah.
That's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you call a lead who doesn't know who you are, know, like, and trust you, you start with who you are, why you're calling, and what you want as quickly as you can get to it.
Right.
That's how we teach introductions, right? Because it flows along with what the consumer wants. And I elicited those questions just by asking you. You and I didn't prepare this, right?
No.
You just put yourself in the shoes of being a consumer. So now when I teach a salesperson, that every consumer that you reach out to wants to know, who are you? Why are you calling me? What do you want? You immediately can improve your scripting just like that.
Today's podcast is brought to you by REDX Expired Leads, one of the best lead types to add to your prospecting toolbox. Here's why. First, expired leads have a high urgency to relist because they were hoping to have their home sold already. Second, since expired leads have worked with an agent before, you know they're willing to pay an agent commission. And finally, expired listing homeowners are some of the lowest hanging fruit in the industry. They've already raised their hand and said, I want to sell my home. All you have to do is get their attention and restore their hope in getting their home sold. In fact, 90% of expireds will try to sell again in the next 6 months. While there are many providers that offer expired leads, they don't all have the best data. That's why REDX has invested in a research-backed proprietary algorithm that checks the data before it gets to you, which is a fancy way of saying all your leads and data are the best possible match for the homeowner's information. If you're interested in prospecting expired leads, sign up today at redx.com/podcast and save $150 on your setup fee. Your business will thank you.
So what does that introduction sound like? I mean, if we were to script it out for our listeners.
Sure. So let's say that you've registered on my website, right, to look at houses for sale. You've taken no other action. You've requested nothing from me. So I'll say ring, ring, and you answer the phone, Andrew. Ring, ring.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew. This is Dale Archdekin with Amazing Realty. Look, you registered on my website to look at homes for sale. I just wanted to see if you're planning on buying in the next few months or if you're just window shopping at this point. That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's my intro script, right?
Nice.
I matched your word. I used your name assumptively. I told you who I am. I told you why I'm calling because you took an action. And then I asked you a question, which is, are you buying in the next few months? And then I added on a special little kicker, which is, gave you the opportunity to tell me no, some variation of no, right? Which is, Are you just window shopping? Gotcha. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I love that. And how does that change, or how would you adjust that for a cold lead, someone who hasn't signed up on your website or given you their information, right? You're calling maybe an expired or for sale by owner.
Sure. Okay, expired. Ring, ring, Andrew.
Hello.
Hello, Andrew. This is Dale Archdekin with Amazing Realty. Listen, I see that your home actually came off the market as an expired listing. I wanted to reach out to you and see if you're still taking offers on that property. That's it. Here's who I am. Here's why I'm calling you. And here's what I want to know. Straight to the point.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So when we're teaching agents and listening to their calls, do you know how often they don't do those 3 elements? How long it takes to get to those 3 elements? And you literally can hear it in the voice and the tone of the prospect that's being called, where they're literally giving back to the salesperson because the salesperson doesn't say who they are, or they don't immediately get to the point, or they actually, the worst script is this. I'll demonstrate it for you. Ring, ring, Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, Andrew. How's it going today?
Good. Who is this?
That is the absolute worst sales script in the history of sales scripting.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't answer any of that stuff that you want to know, right? Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many prospecting calls and live calls that I've listened to where the agent accidentally backtracks because they didn't establish that, right? Anytime someone has to ask you, who is this? Or what do you want? Or why are you calling me? You haven't failed maybe, but you've gotten pretty close to it, right? And then you have to start over, and then you lose your, any rapport that you might have even been able to have to start with, right?
Yes. When the lead is more professional about a sales interaction than you are in dire trouble.
Right.
Yeah. So when they're like prompting you about, hey, you probably should have told me who you are, or you should have told me why you're calling, or you should have told me what you want, they've just taught you a sales lesson that you have to pay me a lot of money to teach you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So we've got this introduction, and I love your rationale and your philosophy behind this introduction and why it's so important. How can we maintain this, still being professional? They know we're a salesperson. They know that we're trying to have this, kind of business interaction. What's next? How do we maintain a sense of professionalism while still not coming across as overtly salesy after that introduction?
Sure. Well, at that point, you've asked them a pretty pointed question, typically, right? An actionable question. And if it's an outbound, I'm reaching out to you. I need to be pretty pointed about my question. And that's usually going to be some form of, are you buying or selling, right? Some variation thereof. If it's an inbound lead, then you can ask those weaker, when I say weaker, less pointed or less directive questions. If you're reaching out to me to get something, then I can ask those questions like, how can I help you? Or what can I do for you, right? Or what made you contact us? Because you're seeking something. So that's the distinction there. Usually what happens in a sales interaction is the prospect is either going to start telling you their story or they're going to object to you, or a combination of the both of the two, right? When you're doing prospecting. And objecting is, right, obviously, like, I'm not going to do what you want me to do when you want me to do it, or who you want me to do it with, some variation thereof. And so when we're teaching these kind of approach the consumer the way they want to be approached, when somebody objects to you, we could do this exercise again, where I said, hey, if you're a consumer and you want to tell a salesperson no, what do you not want them to do? I'll just give it to all the listeners. You probably don't want the salesperson to argue with you. You probably think that you're right. Whatever you told them, whatever your reasoning for saying no, not yet, or not with you, you think you're right. And you're more than happy to tell other people why you're right. Right. And you don't want the salesperson to try to change your mind. So what we hear is where salespeople go wrong in a lot of cases, into the face of objections, is they'll argue, which we didn't want the salesperson to do, or they'll try to change the prospect's mind, like close them. Oh, you're not buying a house yet? Well, interest rates are pretty low. And if I found you the right house, would you want to move in tomorrow? Kind of stuff, right? So instead, the one thing that I did say is, as a lead or a prospect, if you say no, not yet, not with you, you probably think you're right in your reasoning and you're happy to tell people. So what we teach salespeople to do is just ask a good discovery question into the face of that, right? Hey, Andrew, if you say you're not going to buy right now and you think you're right and you'd love to tell me, just tell me. And I might solicit that question by asking something like, oh, got it, Andrew. What's important about buying next year? Or how did you decide not to buy now and to wait, right? I'm going to ask a pure discovery question that's not leading, doesn't make you wrong, doesn't put us in opposition, and it just more naturally flows with what you, the consumer, want, right?
Right. Discovering my motivation.
Yeah.
And here's a question for you: is I've heard this strategy, or I've seen this strategy in action on other scripts, on other conversations. And as soon as an agent uncovers that motivation, they go, ooh, I got something I can use here. And then they try to leverage that to either fool or manipulate or control the conversation and get them where they need to go. What's a tactful, professional way to not do that, to maintain trust and to use, and I hate even to say use, but to leverage that motivation to get that conversation to where you want it to go, again, without being manipulative?
Yeah, here's what I would say. As a general rule, the way we teach is there's no singular objection to anything. There's usually some supporting evidence around that objection. There's usually some sort of related element to that objection. So think about it this way. Wait a minute. There's always more than one. There's probably 2 or 3 objections. Let me get them all out before I try to present a different method or a different approach for you, right? So maybe that sounds like, and we're just making this up, right? Let's say I talk to you, you say, hey, Dale, thanks for the call, but I'm not buying until next year. And I say, hey, got it, Andrew, what's important about buying next year? And you say something like, oh, well, I want to save up some more money to put down on my payment and reduce my whatever, right? Yeah. And me, normally a salesperson would be like, ooh, hey, I got it. If I can reduce your payment now, can we sell you a house now? Right. And they're like, oh, yeah. I win. Yeah. Well, what if it's like, well, I'm saving up more money to put more money down and I also have to X, right? Right. Guess what? If you shoot your shot after that first piece of information Andrew gave me, Andrew's probably going to follow it up with but then there's this other thing, right? And so another thing that we teach is your first close is always your best close. And so you want to save it. It's your best opportunity, because when I teach it like this. And I say, hey, us salespeople are like the big bad wolf. And we have grandma's nightgown on until the first time we close. That's when we whip the nightgown off. We're like, see, I am a big bad wolf, and I do want to eat you, right? Because everything that comes out of that salesperson's mouth after the first time they try to close you, they probably will hold against you in a court of law, right?
Right.
Yeah. So once the salesperson tries to close you, how forthcoming are you with more information that they might use against you to try and change your mind?
Not at all.
Not at all. So hold back the close is the point, right? And sometimes when we work with salespeople, we have to help them close more or to recognize the closing opportunity. In a lot of cases, especially with real estate agents, we have to get them to hold back the close, because we've got so many high I's and D's who are like, oh, close. Hi, my name's Close. I'd love to close you. When can I close you? Right.
Right.
Yeah. So we have to help them scale that back a bit, keep the nightgown on just a little bit longer so they don't scare the kiddies.
Absolutely. And this is, it's not counterintuitive, but it runs counter to what I've heard so many agents and even coaches say, which is, as soon as you get that objection and it's, and it's a deal breaker, just move on to the next call. It sounds like all it takes is a little bit of patience and a little bit more discovery and genuine interest in what this person, wants to accomplish, needs to accomplish, even if that takes you an extra 30, 60, 90 seconds on any given phone call. It sounds like that's well worth it, instead of just, on to the next one. Right.
Don't take my word for this, but most of the very big teams, brokerages out there that are topping the charts know that size matters when it comes to your database, and they are playing the database game. And what they know is that everybody will eventually buy or sell real estate, or know somebody who wants to buy or sell real estate. So you never throw anybody out.
Right.
If it's not now, here's what we teach our people, right? When we first start teaching them, we say now, sooner, or logical next step. And every conversation that you have, can we buy now? Can we sell now? And if you say no, not now, why not now? Prove to me that we can't do it now, shouldn't do it now, and won't do it now. And once you prove that to me, lead, now prove to me that we can't do it sooner. Why can't we do it sooner, right? Why shouldn't we do it sooner? And if you prove to me not now, not sooner, then we're going to go to the logical next step, right? When should I interact with you again? How long from now? Do I follow up with you in a week, a month, a year, or do I just put you into cold storage so that you're consuming my content so that I hope to be the only agent in your mind when the time comes? That's how you should be looking at every interaction that you have with people, unless somebody says, hey, I can never and will never make any money to spend on a house, and I don't want to have any friends who can do that either. If that's that person, then throw them out of your database.
Absolutely. I love that. And that kind of leads me into another question I have for you, Dale, which is that I think a lot of, and let me see if I can phrase this right. You've been a salesperson for, what did you say, 20, 30 years now?
30 years now.
30 years. So you've been in sales for 30 years. and I think it's fair to say that you've seen how sales tactics have changed over the last 3 decades.
Yes.
And so I'm putting myself in the shoes of either a veteran agent or even a new agent who's being taught by seasoned agents. And maybe they're getting some out of date, old-timey sales tactics, old-timey sales strategies that just don't work with how people interact with sales and marketing today, right? So my question is, how has today's consumer, again, putting ourselves in the shoes of the consumer, how has today's consumer evolved from consumers 10, 20, 30 years ago? And what are some things that agents should watch out for or keep in mind as maybe they learn some outdated tactics, or as they learn, what they should be doing today, right?
Yeah. So I'd say that today's consumer, and we are today's consumers. So first of all, think about how you think of sales. Every salesperson listening here, that's the big thing that you got to do.
Sure.
How do you feel about sales? How do you recognize that somebody has only their own best interests at heart? Or how do you tell, what do you not like about how salespeople approach you or talk to you, right? So think about that. Try not to do what they do. And that's going to be the first way when somebody's teaching you one of these fancy trickery techniques. Would it work on you is the first question, right?
Yeah.
Would it work on you? And then what, right? Let's say that a salesperson used the strategy you're being taught and they used it on you. At what point do you think you would figure out that it was a strategy, and how would you feel about it at that point? So the other thing is that people only do things for their own motivation and for their own reasons. So when you're talking to a prospect and a consumer first, they never forget that you're a salesperson. They always regard you as a salesperson. So if you're approaching it from understanding how you feel about salespeople, I was just very quick, like you and I crafted the principles of an intro based on how you answered as a consumer. Super easy, right? It gave you what you want. So salesperson, approach the consumer the way you would want to be approached as a consumer, and run these tactics through the bullshit filter, right? And you can beat that out or whatever, right? How would it work on you, and how would you feel? I'd say those are the two pieces of advice that I could give.
I love it. That's amazing. Dale, we're running up on time here. I want to give you just one more opportunity, one last chance here to leave any sage wisdom, tactics, strategies, anything that you want to leave with our audience today before we wrap up, and then we'll talk about where people can find you.
Yeah, sure. Here's what I'd say. Being a longtime salesperson, obviously we have to manage ourselves in order to get ourselves to do what we know we need to do. And the more that we can do what we need to do versus not do what we need to do means that we succeed more. The other thing that my company, we help people with is optimizing their sales teams, how we lead and manage and hold accountable our sales teams. And that's another massive void, I would say, in a lot of cases in the real estate industry. So you listening to this, if you're a salesperson, you may or may not have a good manager who knows how to lead you or doesn't know how to lead you and help you. You as a leader or manager may or may not know how to effectively lead your salespeople and give them structure and guidance. And here's what I would say is that most salespeople, believe it or not, want a good leader who's going to help them to achieve their own goals, but not just by shouting at them to make more contacts, right?
Right.
So that's part of what we try to do also, is give more of a holistic approach to teaching team leaders how to better lead and manage their sales force so that everybody wins, because nobody wins if a salesperson isn't producing.
Got it. I love it. Well, we've been given just a little taste of that approach and that philosophy and some of those strategies here on the podcast today. I wish we could keep going. But if our audience does want to find you, does want to dive into some more of these coaching strategies and tactics, where can they find you, Dale?
Yeah, our website is smartsalescoaching.com. That'd probably be the easiest. You can also catch a lot of, our podcast and training on YouTube at Smart Sales Coaching.
Wonderful. Well, go check it out, everybody. Go check the Cash Call podcast that Dale runs here and see some of those calls and some of those strategies. Check out his coaching. It's amazing stuff. Dale, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such an amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our audience, I hope you enjoyed it. I bet you enjoyed it. And if you want to revisit this, rewatch it, please save it, download it, go find the audio, listen to it, in the car, on the go, in between your appointments and your calls, and please implement these things. These are such tactical, vital strategies and approaches. Dale gave you scripts, he gave you mindset, he gave you motivation, all packed into this little podcast here. So go check it out, and we will see you next Thursday at 1:30 Mountain Time. Thanks again, Dale.
Thank you.